What was your creepy unexplained experience as a child? Haven't told this one in a while. I was young, 5 to 7, somewhere in there. I was sleeping in between my parents for whatever reason. I woke up, I remember the clock reading around 4 a.m. There was something standing by the window, looking out into the front yard. It looked like a man in a brown wool robe, about 6 feet 4 inches, or so. I started to stir and sat up in bed, and the thing turned and looked at me. Dear God, that face. Extremely pale white skin, lots of really pronounced wrinkles, and the face drooped like it was melting, down into a really pointy chin. Almost similar to a scream mask, but with all of the features of a living being. Its mouth was hanging open and its eyes were wide, almost like it was worried or frightened. It kept its gaze on me while it moved away from the window, in front of the bed, and out the open bedroom door. The second it exited the room, the lights turned on their own and both of my parents jumped up on either side of me, breathing heavily like they'd both just woken up from a nightmare. To be clear, I was fully able to move during this. I don't think it was sleep paralysis, but I'm not sure what it could have been other than some kind of demon or really fucking ugly ghost. I've never seen it since, but I can still picture it clear as day. I was out at our cabin in the remote mountainous wilderness of Colorado with my dad, and had to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. This necessitated a flashlight and shoes, because the outhouse was far away. There was no one but me and my dad for miles in any direction. So I thought. I suddenly heard voices in the distance and stopped in my tracks. It seemed to be coming from my right, deep in the woods in the middle of nowhere, a quarter of a mile from the road. Being 11 and unafraid of the world, I foolishly yelled, "Who's out there?" There was silence for a few seconds, then a shouted string of profanity so vulgar it terrified my virgin ears. I stood stock still for a moment like a terrified rabbit but heard nothing else, so I ran back to the house and woke my dad up. He got up, loaded his gun, and turned all the lights on, but we never heard another sound. To this day, we have not seen or heard another person within 15 miles of the cabin.
When I was a child, my grandparents' house always creeped me out. I was terrified of the basement, and there was something off about the rest of the house. Once when I was 10, my mom and I were sleeping in my grandpa's bed. I couldn't sleep and I was facing the middle of the bed, so the back of my head was near the space between the bed and the wall/window. All of a sudden, I feel something poke the back of my head twice. I was petrified and froze, so I never turned my head to see what was poking me. To this day I don't know what could have happened, but I can still feel those pokes. I was young, maybe 8. Just so you know, I always go to sleep in my bed and I'd never, ever fall asleep on the couch. My grandpa died and we got back from his funeral. That night I went to bed, in my room as usual, but I woke up in the middle of the night on the living room couch. When I looked up, I saw my grandpa's ghost. It wasn't scary or anything, at the time it felt natural. He didn't say anything, but there was this understanding between us. I went back to my room and went back to sleep. I would have assumed it was a dream, but it was so vivid and real that it stuck with me for years. It wasn't even "I saw a ghost" moment. It was just a weird vivid memory that seemed so normal at the time that I didn't think anything strange of it. When I was about 20 I told my mom that story and she said was it the day of his funeral. Because I saw his ghost that night too. That fucked my shit up. When I was little, I had one of those Minnie Mouse plushes, with the cute costume and the big open-mouthed grin. I even had a studio portrait taken with it that turned out beautifully. Well, I woke up one morning and was just lying in my bed, looking over the edge of my bed at my toys scattered on the ground. All of a sudden, as I was looking at my mini doll, it started talking. It made almost a hissing noise, then it started whispering my name. Frozen, I watched as the doll's open mouth slowly shut. I ran out of the room as fast as my little feet would carry me. My parents dismissed it as my imagination, until I showed them the doll's permanently closed mouth. We went back and looked at the studio portrait. That doll's mouth had been open. It would not come apart now, no matter how hard we pulled. I don't know what happened. Maybe I'll never know. But I didn't touch that doll again. It wasn't as friendly looking with a closed mouth.
I grew up on the central coast of California, and my family would frequently visit Big Sur for camping, hiking, or just hanging out and having lunch at one of the restaurants. I must have been about 7. Old enough to visit the bathroom independently, but still rather new to the freedom of walking around somewhere that wasn't my neighborhood or the woods alone. I went into the bathroom at a restaurant called the River Inn, and there were 3 stalls, 1 handicapped, and 2 regular. All but one of the stalls, a regular one, were taken. I distinctly remember looking under the doors for feet, because I was a little kid, and for whatever reason preferred the handicapped stall. I saw no feet, but the doors were locked. Whatever. I went into the one open stall. There was a huge fucking squid in the toilet. Like, the body had to be at least a foot long, plus tentacles, coiled around the inside of the toilet bowl. It totally filled the available space. Cloudy dead squid eyes, gazing up at me from the pooper. I ran out of the bathroom in horror, told nobody, and held my pee for the 45-minute drive home. What the fuck was that squid doing there? All I can surmise is it was a line cook prank, in an area that ubiquitously has squid on the menu. 25 years later, that terror toilet squid still haunts me. Till this day, I don't know if they were a series of fucked up dreams or if it was reality. But, when I was around 6 to 7, my family and I lived in a 2-story house with all the bedrooms upstairs. My mum would always send me to her room to collect nappies. My brother had just been born, and of course, my parents' room was at the very end of the hallway. I remember I had this distinct feeling that I could never recall, I just knew it when I felt it. The feeling was a warning sign that it was coming. Don't ask what the fuck it was, because I had no clue. When it was coming, I would get comfortable, lie on a bed or sit down and close my eyes. I had to close my eyes though, under no circumstances were they to be open. I felt like it was forbidden to look at it. It was like a set of rules that I had to follow, or else something would happen. I was too scared to question it. It would slowly come in, the feeling would grow as it got closer, and it would come from the hallway through the door. I felt like it was floating because I could never hear footsteps. It would literally just talk to me, like that's it. The subject would range from small talk to something extremely creepy, my mother's death. It would usually ask me questions like, "How was your day?" but I would never answer because, again, I was scared to death. At this point, I would wait and listen until I couldn't feel its presence anymore. Only then would it be safe to open my eyes and move. It was weird because I seemed to forget the experience until the next one. After it left, I would just continue on with what I was doing like nothing had happened. The only time I'd actually acknowledge it was when the feeling would wash over me and I'd realize that I fucked up by being alone. I really don't remember much. That one nappy experience always stood out though. Everything would kind of blur together. Pretty much all my memories from then are like that. I only remember my thoughts and feelings at that time. I don't even know. When I was 7, my dad had bought a pocket watch that came with its own stand. He put it on top of our TV since we didn't have any other clock in the house beside the bedroom just yet. We had just moved in 2 weeks earlier. Me being me, I got up in the middle of the night when everyone was asleep to get a quick late night snack. I sneak halfway across the living room when I notice that the pocket watch's tick was getting louder and louder. I stopped to inspect it, didn't seem to be that bad, I ignored it, got my snack, started heading back. Again, I heard the tick of the pocket watch getting louder and louder. I stopped again, then heard the following sung in a song. Mr. Frost is a bad man, Mr. Frost is a snitch. Mr. Frost is a bad man, beat us within an inch. I bolt to my room, hide under the covers, and refuse to come out. Ever since then, I've hated that pocket watch. I've tried many times to search for someone named Mr. Frost in my area and nothing has come up.
I was like 9 years old. I was sleeping in my parents' bed. At that point, I think it was a Saturday morning and my dad had gone bike riding with his friends real early and I woke up and got in bed with my mom. I was having a bad dream and I woke up and looked around and went to go pee. When I got back into the bed there was a white pale hand waving at me from behind the closet. I thought I was dreaming but I was so shocked I couldn't do anything. I kind of put it in the back of my mind until a year later my older cousin said she had seen a hand waving at her behind her mirror when I was at her house. It made me realize I really experienced that and didn't imagine it.
About time I get to talk about this again. My family lives in a super rural part of East Tennessee, and we have a family homestead that's been passed down for generations called the Turley House. Legend in the family has it that it was a Civil War hospital, which I can totally see because it's absolutely ancient and creepy. We also have a legend in the family that we're all haunted by a demon/spirit/God knows what called Wool Eyes. He's so prominent in our family's history that he's just a fact of life at this point, so it's not unusual to hear somebody say something like, "Oh look, Wool Eyes is at it again." He must be upset. One of the creepy experiences I had growing up here is the never-ending rosebush. There were 2 rosebushes on the corner of the house that wasn't very big. I have some distinct memories of playing around them and getting absolutely batshit lost in the rosebushes, running in circles for hours and hours at a time. It was sort of like that scene in Spirited Away when Chihiro and Haku are running through the flower hedges. Eventually, I would find my way out, but it would be hours later and my mom would be hella angry that I was gone for so long. I never really thought much of it because kid logic, but I asked my mom about it years later and she said that all the kids in the family have stories about getting lost in the same spot. Everybody always blamed it on Wool Eyes, saying he was just having fun messing around. Wish I could go back and explore the house some. It's got some crazy stories through the years.
Please, tell more about Wool Eyes.
Wool Eyes is a pretty cool legend. Everyone claims to have had some interaction with him before in one way or another. When I was little, I remember being pushed on the porch swing by a guy in a big coat, but I could never focus on what he looked like. I just knew he was there. I also remember seeing him upstairs and got spooked because I wasn't allowed up there. My parents have had worse encounters. My mom talks about him watching her sleep at night and pushing her friend down the staircase and breaking her arm. Apparently, there was also one time he imitated a family member out in the backfield and chased her back to the house where the real person was waiting. When my parents were dating, Dad said he spent the night there once and came down the stairs to get water and there was a man in a wool trench coat and a large hat sitting at the table. He looked up at him and said, "This isn't your fucking house. You have 5 seconds to leave." And then he got up and went into the basement. Dad told me he left my mom there and all his clothes and drove away that instant. LOL, he hasn't been since, won't even drive down the road the house is on. Apparently, he also likes to pick favorites and takes care of them. My deceased grandfather was supposedly one of his favorites, and when we brought his casket back for the wake, really random old tradition, the house was in a total uproar. Power outages, storms, no cell service, things breaking, it was intense. He's never hurt me either, just messed around like with the rosebush incident and popped the lock on the basement door when my uncle locked me down there as a practical joke. I also have some crazy intense luck when it comes to life-threatening situations, so everyone jokes he's keeping me safe. Rumor has it my great-grandmother struck a deal with him and that's why he never bothered her. When she died nobody wanted the house, but her son Harold took it. He's recently been missing and now the house is up for grabs again, so I guess you can think what you will on that one since nobody really knows what happened to him. Personally, I'd love to get my hands on that house and check out Wool Eyes now that I'm an adult, but my mom swore she'd beat me to death if I tried to live there. LOL. Still, at some point I want to sneak back out there and explore the house and finally get up to the second and third floors that I was banned from as a little kid.